today we are going to study customer knowledge. Now, how customer knowledge is important for salespeople and what could be the objective of marketing effort in terms so as to enhance the satisfaction by giving information to the people in the market is important. In this basic module, we will cover the concept of marketing, basically emphasizing on the customer's importance. Now, the basic concept of selling in the market depends a lot on customer orientation. It has to be focused on customers. Basically, the strategies of personal selling has to be driven in a term where customers are the focus. It has to be customer centered, it has to relate to customer satisfaction, and it has to be market driven in such a way that the customer's expectations are met in the market. Now, the basic concept is related so as to earn profits, and profits is basically a function of customer satisfaction. Here it is important that whatever is required to enhance the kind of impact in terms to enhance the value for the customers is basically the focus point or the strategy for the personal selling people. Now, we have to give adjustments into the market in such a way that we are assuming a market in a term where it is competitive, and we have to gain an edge in terms where it has to be long term and it has to be in terms to build up a relationship. The selling and the marketing concepts have changed in the modern era. Now, see this concept. The selling concept has come to the marketing concept we have shown you in this model. The starting point over here is the factory, that is, it gives a focus on the existing products. Meaning of this is to sell and promote the products into the market, and the end result is that you get the profits through sales volume. But the marketing concept focuses on the target markets, customer needs, integrated marketing, and profits through customer satisfaction. That is, we are reversing the chain in terms where customer is important. What is needed by the customer has to be genuinely studied and surveyed, and that has to be manufactured, and it is important that we build up satisfaction into the market. So basically, the target market has to be captured by a kind of a concept of promotion. See this model where we have shown you the target market. Basically, it is the interplay where you try to promote the product in terms through the knowledge of the product, price, promotion, and place. The customer should get all these 4 parameters in the marketing concept so as to enhance the value of the products. Now, basically, the kind of the impact which genuinely impacts the knowledge and the awareness of the customer is shaped by the economic conditions of the market. It is the competitors playing an important role, their offering and services, the kind of the level of maturity of the products in terms of development is important. The technological impact and the kind of the knowledge of the people related to use of the technology is also important so as to understand the customer of a particular market segmentation. The socio-cultural demographics in terms of the social values, norms, and the kind of the language and the skills has to be understood before you take the product to the market. Now, genuinely, customer is a bundle of emotions who has to be given products, but products have a kind of identity which is physical and have a kind of a legal consideration, that is the copyrights, the patents, and the kind of the compliance with the government law is also important. The marketing mix model is quite a complex model which basically displays that both the internal and the external environment play an important role to decide the kind of the shape of the product into the knowledge and build up the kind of the awareness for the customers. We have shown you the environment over here which consists of the economic, the competitive, socio-cultural, demographic, legal, political, then it is the technology and the government. The internal controllable variables of the company consist of the price, promotion, place, and the product. And here it is the kind of the target market. But the marketing has to be based on a concept which has to look into the supply and the demand side. It has to adapt itself to the demand of the market, and it has to be highly interactive in terms to build an open system of genuinely communicating with the customers. It has to be a dynamic process so as to change with the environment, and it has to take up an extremely challenging job in terms of building the managerial abilities and the kind of the selling skills in the market so as to understand the customer in such a way that you have a global approach towards your functions. Now, how do we develop markets and how do we develop customers or how do we develop products? We have shown you in this model. See, on the y-axis we have the offerings, on the x-axis we have the markets. The new market development or the new customer development is by giving the better products. Better is the innovative and the new ideas given in a better shape basically develops the customers and develop the market. The customer value and satisfaction is determined by the kind of the impact and the value you create in the minds of the customers. The basic formula for customer satisfaction is it is input upon output. That is, input relates to the customer's cost. This is output is customer benefits. Therefore, CV is equal to customer cost divided by customer benefits. Now the customer's perceptions of the perceived satisfaction depends much on his expectation, what he gets out of the market or out of the manufacturer. See, the perceived performance of the product, if it is below the expectations of the customer, you get a dissatisfied customer. If the perceived performance meets the customer's expectations, you have a satisfied customer in the market. If the perceived performance exceeds the expectations of the customers, you have a delighted customer. So this is our focus. The modern marketing focuses on the delighted concept of the customers, where you have to give more than the expectations of the people. That is, people have to get the full value for the return of the money invested. And here we are working because we are not in an era of professionalism. We are not in an era of specialization, but we are in an era of core specialization, where we have to build up our products to the needs and the values of the customers. The primary activities related to marketing basically support the system in such a way that you manage the kind of the operations in such a way that cost is managed in an efficient way. The marketing and the sales services have to support the product functions, but the support activities relate to the kind of the infrastructure and the human resource team which you have in the market, and it is the selling skills and the abilities and the talents of the personal selling people in the field who basically decide or the basic impact they want to create into the market so as to enhance the kind of the satisfaction. It is the kind of the technology you use, it is the kind of the procurement of the products you basically adapt in such a way so as to modernize the impact, where the products can reach in an easy way to the people. Relationship marketing is important. Customers are partners. We have to collaborate with our basic customers so as to convert them into clients. The development and maintenance of long-term, cost-effective relationship with customers in order to retain their preferences is important for company. Now, what is relationship marketing? Let's study this model. Basic marketing from transaction marketing has been converted into relationship marketing. Here we have shown you the factors. Time orientation. Relationship marketing from short term has been converted to long term. Organization goal from making sales has converted into retaining customers. Customer service priority, relatively low emphasis was given in the previous era, but now high emphasis on service values. Customer contact was moderate in the previous era, but now it is frequent and it is continuous. Customer commitment was low, but now it is high. It is the seller customer basically interaction was a kind of a conflict manipulation, but now it is cooperation and trust which you have to create into the market. The source of the quality was mainly from production, but now it is the company-wide impact in terms from the brand to the image and to the kind of the values related to the company create an impact in terms to create a value for the customers. Tools for implementing relationship marketing basically relate to the kind of the programs taken up by the company. They relate to the kind of the affinity programs, the frequent buyer programs, the database marketing, the kind of the partnership alliances built up, the kind of the co-branding and the co-marketing strategy, and the electronic data exchange. This is also a kind of a behavior managed in such a way that we create values in the market. A network of a system of trust is created by which we exchange goods and services into the market. Now, according to Kotler, the basic selling efforts has to relate not only to satisfy the customers, but we must delight the customers. This is the new concept where we have to orient the marketing efforts so as to create an impact which is valuable for the company and the customers. The determinants of the kind of the customer delivered value is shown over here in this model. Now, the customer delivered value is created by the total customer value. This genuinely is by the kind of the cost which is invested. First is we have the image value. This image value helps to decide a kind of a service value. Personal value. The personal value basically gives you the product values, and this product values basically creates the kind of the total customer value, whereas the total customer cost is incurred in such a way where we have the psychological cost, the energy cost, the time cost, and the monetary cost, which emphasizes or impacts the kind of the total customer cost. So we have to balance both these streams, but the kind of the impact of value is high in terms of the cost which is inculcated in the market. a balance, a kind of a rhythm has to be created so as to create a kind of a basic impact in terms to enhance the kind of the services given to the customers. Now the customers have to be developed. You have to get involved the customers. Involvement of customers is important because the companies genuinely have to build their long-term sales. Development of the customers is an important part for the company. Let's see this model where we have shown you how the customer development process takes place by the selling people. Here is we have a ability where we try to suspect who are the prospects. Here the kind of the basically prospective customers are those who have got the potential and the desire to buy the products. So we try to disqualify people who genuinely have the desire but do not have money. Our focus is on prospects which are like the first time the customers to the company. This could become the repeat customers, and then repeat customers could be converted into clients, and clients could become the members of the companies, and these members could advocate the company's products to the society, and after this they will become the partners of the company. This is the total involvement process where you try to build up the kind of the process where active customers are developed, and this is how the company has to work on the strategies that from prospective customers you have to make them to the partners where they add value to your services and to your products by advocating these services to the other people. The good thing about the personal selling in terms to build up a kind of awareness for the customer development to the market relates to give a kind of a positive response to all the phone calls. It is to make the recommendations to the customers about the products. It is to genuinely use decent language, use a kind of a decent culture in terms to genuinely interact with the customers. We have to show appreciation to people for whatever we are doing. It is to make the service suggestions to the people. It is genuinely to use an approach which is genuinely problem solving in such a way that you give solution to the people. The kind of the language has to be simple, and the personality problems in terms of attitude and ego have to be subdued. We genuinely have to rationalize and routinize our responses in a quality way to accept the responsibility for whatever efforts we take up into the market so as to build up the kind of the sustainable planning feature for the market. Now let's see this model in which we have genuinely a concept where we create customer value. This is allocating the marketing investment according to the customer value. We have these two pyramids. First is here is the profit making concept, and here we have the marketing investment pyramid. From the lead customers we have the iron customers lead to the golden customers, and from this we have the platinum customers. So the concept of the marketing is like for you the platinum customers are the most important. Here the investment is high and here the attention is high. The efforts have to be maximized in such a way genuinely that they give you lot of returns in terms for the kind of the repeat purchases, and the kind of the buying capacity is more for these customers. They are the brand loyal customers who would genuinely return to the companies and could become the clients and the partners for the long-term sustainable sales efforts of the company. Now how do we interpret that the customer is going to get attached to the company? The process of basically building a customer is a little difficult process, but then genuinely we have to understand the environment in which the customer is residing. See the interpretation knowledge model where we have shown you how we make the customer aware. The information from the environment has to be studied, and the interpretation has to be done in terms of the exposure and the kind of the comprehension abilities of the people. This basically builds the knowledge, meanings and the beliefs of the customers where you try to understand the people. The interpretation process basically relates to the kind of the memory which you built up in terms of the product knowledge and get the customer involved. Now the exposure which the customers get into the market is basically intentional exposure and the kind of the accidental exposure. In the intentional exposure, the customer basically makes the efforts so as to search for the products and looks for the information when he needs the product, and he basically searches the websites, the newspapers and the kinds of the brochures and the literature associated with the product. But the accidental exposure occurs when the customers unexpectedly see a product and encounter with the market information related to the product. And sometimes a selective exposure is there where the customer basically is not interested into the marketing efforts of the company but tries to select only the information which could be relevant for his basic lifestyle. This is, we have to have a kind of a implication in terms of our efforts so as to build on this kind of exposure so as to cultivate customers for the companies. The marketers can facilitate intentional exposure and could genuinely maximize the efforts in terms where the customers could accidentally see the product and could have a kind of a trial and an interaction with the product. The examples of facilitating the intentional exposures relate to the kind of the elaborated product brochures given to the people in terms of the well-trained salespeople who genuinely convince people to use the products in terms of the desires and the expectations what they have in their life. It is in-store seminars, and it is the kind of the basically the movies and the documentary films by which we genuinely tell customers about the products. Now, to get attention from the customers is genuinely a difficult process. Focusing on the cognitive system of information that is relevant is important to achieve the goals and values for the company. The factors influencing the attention of the customers is shown in this model. First is the affective state of the customers. Then you get the involvement of the customers, and then is the environmental involvement of the customers. So the marketing implications relate to a kind of a effort which has to influence the kind of the personal sources of involvement in terms so as to build the situational sources of involvement and the factors affecting the environmental prominence. Now, this is a kind of a comprehension where we built up a process of cognitive understanding where you try to understand the customers in such a way that their behaviors are genuinely relevant to a particular environment. You have to rely on such behaviors, like if you are working in an environment which is winter oriented, then you have to understand the needs related to the kind of the environment in which the customers are existing. Now, here you cannot sell goods related to the summer implications in terms like the goods which are more used in summer vacations or in the seasonal conditions of summers cannot be sold in the conditions and the climates where the genuinely the environment is not supporting. So the customer is associated with the environment. You have to understand the environment, and then according to the environment you have to supply the goods. Now, the variations in the comprehension of understanding basically relate to a kind of automatic process where you have highly automatic little conscious awareness about the customers, and here you try to control the kind of the information given to them. The level of comprehension basically from the shallow moves to kind of deep focus on more abstract meanings given to the product. It is the extent of elaboration done from the less elaborative aspects to more elaborative and learning aspects where the customers are focused. The effect on memory has to be focused in such a way that low recall value has to be converted into a stronger memory and a greater recall value. This will build the kind of the knowledge which is based on information, and the customers could remember the information. Now, let's study the relationship among exposure, attention and comprehension by the customer, which is beautifully shown in this model. Now, when an exposure is given by the marketer, the customer can say yes or no. But if it is yes, it has to be a focused attention, or it is the unconscious attention. The focused attention basically relates to a kind of a deep comprehension in terms of building abstract personal meaning to it. The personal meaning could be elaborated or not elaborated, but sometimes this comprehension could be shallow in terms to give a concrete meaning to the kind of the basic image built up by the customer, and this could also be elaborate or not elaborate. The unconscious attention which is genuinely given by the customer is very shallow. It is only a kind of a recognition given which is not very elaborative. So we have to understand what is the kind of the attention level, how you have to get the customer focused in terms so as to give the elaborated information about the product. The basic aspect is to genuinely remember and build up a meaning. The customer has to learn about a kind of a product and then genuinely build a kind of a perception. Now, learning is enhanced by the kind of the operating conditions which are beautifully, and it is basically a kind of a classical condition of understanding is created. This is to build a kind of a brand loyalty where you create a positive environment of trust and faith. The perception basically relates to the kind of the characteristics of the senses of the customers, where the accuracy of the perception of the image is built up so as to genuinely build an ability to detect the change in terms to get the attention which is genuinely positive and genuinely a kind of attention which builds trust in the market. Now, when you try to understand that learning is important, learning could be only possible if the customers get involved in the process of learning. See this model, learning is basically of two types, high involvement and low involvement. Now, the behavior is created and designed by this learning. See this instrumental conditioning when we create a behavior of customers to buy the product. Behavior is genuinely a kind of a reinforcement, a positive image and a kind of a negative image. this image in terms could also be converted into a kind of a punishment. So punishment and a negative reinforcement is different, and it is difficult also. Now see, this process of reinforcement is a kind of a positive behavior, that is a kind of a likelihood of the customer to buy the product. This would enhance the sales for the company. Negative reinforcement could also be converted into positive aspects by the proper efforts of the marketers, but the punishment, that is if the customer is hating the product and genuinely wants to punish the company, could not be converted into the likelihood of the behavior to get attached with the company. This will result into the low sales and the breaking of the loyalty of the customers towards the customers. So our focus has to be on the kind of the concept where the behavior has to be positive, and even the negative reinforcement can be converted into positive aspects by proper efforts in terms to respect the value of the customers and to convert into the kind of higher sales for the companies. Brand loyalty and habit both are different. The habit is a kind of a process where the customer picks up the product without any attention to the brand, but loyal customer basically searches for the particular brand. We have to make loyalty a part of customers' lifestyle. You have to build up strong brand loyalty so as to genuinely create a stimulus into the market where a kind of an impact is created in terms of getting connected with trustful customers. This basically a concept of developing the brand loyalty relates to the concept of developing the product quality. It is through the sales promotion and good services given to the customers. We genuinely have to convince the customers because we have competitors in the market who are stealing the customers. So our price has to be reasonable in terms to convince the customers. Now the memory basically is a kind of a concept which relates to brand loyalty. The short-term memory relates to the kind of the basic volatile process where you try to recognize a product, but the long-term memory is compared to a hard disk where the kind of the information related to the product is stored in the mind. And this is a kind of a repetition in the rehearsal of the information which basically builds up this kind of long-term memory of the basic concept in terms to buy the product. The traditional versus modern consumer oriented marketing basically relates to this aspect where customers have become important. See this model where we have two pyramids. Initially in the traditional marketing concept, the top management basically related to the middle management, and the middle management basically related to the frontline people, and then these basically people were oriented to the customers. But now customers are the priority in terms they are at the top of the pyramid, and according to the customers' need, the frontline people work, and according to the feedback given by the frontline people, the middle management work, and on this basis of the information, the top management builds up the strategies. So here customers are the utmost important part for the companies where the perception, the values and the needs become the priority for the company. To build a loyalty of the customers is important. For this you have to understand the customer knowledge in terms where you need a kind of a deeper commitment, a deeply held commitment to rebuy and repractice a preferred product or service in the future. Despite the situational influences and the marketing efforts, having the potential to cause switching behavior relates to the loyalty concept. Loyalty is important where the values given for the product relate to the proposition and the functions of the product. The whole cluster of the benefits given by the company to the customer relates to the proposition. Value proposition is a statement about the resulting experience the customer will gain from the company's market offering and from the relationship with the supplier. So this is basically a kind of a satisfaction built up into the market. The satisfaction has to be genuinely measured in terms by the periodic surveys. The customer loss rate of the company, it is the kind of the mystery shoppers, the recommendations of the others through the internet, and you have to monitor the performance according to the survey and the results which you get. The kind of the product and the service quality is important so as to enhance the satisfaction. To stop the kind of the loss of the customers to the competitors, it is important that you focus on quality. Now quality is basically the totality of the features and the characteristics of the product or service that bear on its ability to satisfy the stated or the implied needs. Now here when quality is satisfied, of course it can build up the satisfaction, but still the customers need relationship. A focus of marketing effort has to be done on the customer relationship management. The customer relationship management is an effort to reduce the rate of defect in the products. It is to increase the longevity of the attachment of the customers to the company. It is to increase the share of purchase of the customers for the company's product. It is to genuinely terminate the low profit customers from the companies and add up valuable customers to the companies. It is to focus highly on more profitable customers, that is Customers who are rich, who have a high potential to buy, become important for the companies. And here you try to build a kind of a software in terms of data collection, which is known as the CRM software. This software basically collects the information related to the addresses, the buying behavior, and the kind of the interest and the habits of the customers. And this kind of information helps the marketers to build the strategies to focus on valuable customers. Now let's study how important it is basically to focus on each customer. Mass marketing has been converted into one-to-one marketing. Now when you try to focus on one-to-one marketing, it basically relates to the individual customer. Here each customer profile is important. The customized market offerings have become important. The customer production in accordance to their needs is important. The individualized distribution channels have been created, where the kind of the creative message according to the individual needs have been genuinely created and designed into the market. The individualized incentives are given to the customers in terms of their buying power. It is a kind of a two-way communication process built on the market, where the economies of scope for both the companies and the customers have genuinely gone beyond profits to value creation. The share of customers into the market has increased, and we are trying to focus on the profitable customers, where customer retention has become important. Customer retention is important because the acquisition of new customer is genuinely very difficult and very costly. See this, like when you try to acquire a customer, it can cost 5 times more than the retaining current customers. The average company loses 10% of customers each year. A 5% reduction to the customer defection rate can increase profits by 25 to 85%. The customer profit rate increases over the life of a retained customer. So retaining customer is important, and developing new customers is another important strategy for the company. But how do we go about it? See this model. Here we have the kind of the suspects, prospects, then we have the first time customers, the repeat customers, clients, members converted into partners, and these are the ex-customers of the company. Through the ex-customers you can develop the partners of the companies who genuinely could be retained and could be developed. The marketing dynamics has to be understood in such a way that we have to capture the market in terms of the simple retention and retaining strategy. The customer migrations have to be studied, and the kind of the building loyalty in terms have to be studied, where you could give the basic simple equations of trust and faith to the customers. You have to be accountable and proactive in the market to build a partnership. Now let's study the increasing customer share requirements in the market. Here we have shown you this model where we have to estimate the kind of the share of the customer. We have to select the customers, pursue and genuinely document their requirements. Now when you estimate, it is the share of the customer needs has to be estimated, where value of each offering has to be calculated and supplied, and then cost to serve by market offerings and by location has to be supplied. Selecting is basically availability of the significant increments in terms of the increasing share of the offerings. It is the superior projected growth in customers' need. It is the significant potential to add value and to reduce cost by gaining incremental shares, and it is customer willingness to share gains from the added value. When you pursue, it is focused on share building, converted into broadening the scope of market offering, broadening the kind of the collaborative relationship, and developing a kind of a multiple sourcing opportunities. And when you document, it is a kind of a aligned and a target plan converted into added value plan with a reduced cost. It is enhancing customer profitability, and it is the enhanced profitability of the company. So now when you study the requirements of the customers, it is like when you invest cost in terms to increase the share of the customers' requirements in terms of giving better offerings and better services to the customer, the ultimate result is not only the customer profitability, but it is the profitability of the company also. So enhanced customer is adding up lot of volumes of sales to the companies, and this sales would enhance the growth of the company. I hope the students must have understood what is the impact of customer knowledge, what is the impact of understanding their behavior and making them more learned about a concept which builds a brand loyalty into the market. Thank you, students.